Flood waters are rising as rivers crest, and they will for days. Work and back to school. And many of you are even seeing the sun for the first time in days. In western North Carolina, things are looking better as most of the rain has moved out and the risk of rock slides and mudslides has decreased. However, many roads, particularly in eastern North Carolina and the Sandhills to Charlotte, remain extremely dangerous, and others are being added to the list. I urge you, if you don't have to drive, stay off the roads, particularly south of US 64. Don't drive around barricades. We're seeing this happen now, and the result is not good. Listen to evacuation orders. Be safe and wait this out. Here are some updates. As of this morning, North Carolina has 17 confirmed deaths due to this storm. We mourn the loss of each and every life, and our hearts go out to their friends and their family. We have more than 1,200 road closures, including 356 primary roads. Our major north-south connector, Interstate 95, and portions of Interstate 40 remain closed to traffic. As of this morning, a little more than 484,000 people in North Carolina don't have power. Even though the rain is moving away, the ground is saturated, and even a small amount of rain can cause flash flooding. First responders have reported rescuing and evacuating over 2,600 people and over 300 animals from flooded areas so far, and rescues are ongoing. We have been able to get supplies through to many in need, including some communities that are surrounded by water. 23 truckloads of food, water, and supplies made it into Wilmington this morning, and other communities facing this are being addressed as well. We have requested, and FEMA has added, more counties to our major federal disaster declaration request. Bladen, Columbus, Cumberland, Duplin, Harnett, Lenoir, Jones, Robeson, Sampson, and Wayne counties have been added for a total now of 18 counties. We requested that Hoke and Scotland counties be added and know that there will be more counties added. Right now, the Black, Little, Lumber, Cape Fear, and Neuse rivers are inundated with major flooding, and 13 more rivers are forecast to reach major or moderate flood stage. Please don't make yourself someone who needs to be rescued. Again, stay off the roads in much of the state, especially south of US 64 and east of Interstate 73-74. Many roads in our state are still at risk of floods. Roads you think are safe can be washed away in a matter of minutes. And if you must drive, don't drive on flooded roads. Just a few inches of water can sweep your car away. And again, don't drive around barricades. Be alert for sudden flooding and be prepared to get to higher ground quickly. Pay close attention to flash flood warnings and follow local evacuation orders. I tell you, there are so many heroes throughout our state to thank this morning. The rescuers who are risking their lives to pull people from floodwaters, the law enforcement, firefighters, first responders who are working around the clock, the nurses, the doctors, the pilots, the utility workers, all the volunteers. From the people of North Carolina, I say thank you. We remain grateful to the volunteers who are providing safe shelter for the more than 14,000 evacuees in 110 shelter locations across the state right now. Kristen and I visited the new shelter at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill yesterday, and it was encouraging to see the resilience of the volunteers and the residents there. To the members of the media, I want to thank you for the work that you are doing in getting critical information out to people. We appreciate that. Please continue this message. We've been preparing for and living through Hurricane Florence for more than a week now. But this remains a significant disaster that affects much of our state. The next few days will be long ones as the flooding continues. Our emergency management experts and thousands of rescue and recovery personnel are on the job. This is what we prepared for. And we have new supplies and personnel coming in every hour. We, the people of North Carolina, will get through this. If you have an emergency, dial 911. For other help or resources or information that you might need, dial 211. Or for the deaf and hard of hearing, 888-892-1162 for those using video relay services. And I'm thankful for Monica McGee providing American Sign Language as interpretation. I'll now recognize Mike Sprayberry.
Thank you, Governor. My name is Mike Sprayberry, the Director of the North Carolina Division of Emergency Management. Good afternoon. The State Emergency Operations Center remains activated at a level 1 on day 8 of the Hurricane Florence response. I want to thank all of our federal, state, private sector, and volunteer partners, but I want to especially thank our local partners at the county and municipality level. We know that you have borne the brunt of the Hurricane Florence response, and you're still right there in it at this moment, so thank you so much. Here at the state, we continue to be engaged in large-scale search and rescue operations, and we continue to push out resources like commodities, generators, firefighters, law enforcement, North Carolina National Guard, Highway Patrol, to our county partners as requested. There are over 1,200 first responders performing wide area searches with 233 boats throughout the state. There's also major aviation search and rescue operations being conducted, as well as general support aviation operations to bring in supplies for places that are cut off by water. We're also currently working with our outstanding volunteer partners from the American Red Cross, the North Carolina Baptist Men and Women, and the Salvation Army to set up mass feeding kitchens. We expect to be serving hot meals today. Shelters also remain a top priority, as you heard the governor say, and we are engaged in mass sheltering operations with approximately 14,000 occupants. We're also working with our federal partners to make sure we've got good temporary housing solutions once we move folks out of shelters and we find that we have a need for it. As a reminder, it's important to note that all 911 centers are operational. When you call, you may be answered from a 911 center in another county, but responders will be dispatched from your county as normal. This is how the 911 backup system works. As you know, significant flooding is occurring and will continue to impact in the coming days. That's important to remember. Even when you see the sun out, rivers are still cresting. We urge all of our residents to log into our flood inundation mapping and alert network, known as FIMAN, at FIMAN@nc.gov. Again, that's FIMAN.nc.gov to see which roads and structures will be affected by flooding. Users can sign up to be alerted in this system by text or email when rivers begin to rise. As always, please make sure you follow the guidance of your local officials. That's so important. And stay tuned to your local media to ensure situational awareness. Thank you so much for your support of the North Carolina State Emergency Response Team. Thank you very much, Governor.
Secretary Jim Trogdon.
Thank you, Governor. Jim Trogdon, Secretary of the North Carolina Department of Transportation. As of today, we have 356 primary roads closed across the state, and that number is up from yesterday's 180. Total roads, and we're seeing some positive movement, total roads overnight was 1,700. That's down now to 1,197, but that also includes secondary roads across the state. So we're seeing some gradual improvement in the condition of roadways. Mobility and access. Yesterday's focus was getting good access into Wilmington. We successfully did that. We have one major route that's supporting us, and we're working on the same thing to ensure we have good access into Brunswick County. Brunswick County's access has been up and down due to the flooding conditions and the dynamics of the flooding conditions. We are making great progress, especially in Craven, Carteret, Jones, up in that area of the center of the eastern North Carolina, in clearing debris from the roadways. We're making sure that mobility on the roadways, now that the floodwaters are down, will not be constrained by fallen trees. So the counties up there reporting good progress in clearing trees out of the roadways. We're at 90% of all of our roads cleared in that county area. In Wilmington, New Hanover County, Onslow, Brunswick, Pender, we're able to clear debris, but only as the floodwaters are allowing it. So the areas that we have access, we're successfully getting the debris out of the roadway, but we're still struggling with getting access to all areas of those counties. And that's the same in Columbus and Robeson County as well. But we did have one additional closure overnight of significance, and that's US 221 in Ashe County. It wasn't a mudslide or a rock slide. It was a slope failure, due to the heavy rains. That is closed, and we'll be able to let the citizens know how fast we can get that open. We are looking at potential new closures based on high water. We're working conditions, especially on Cottle Creek on I-85, the vicinity of China Grove, which may flood in the coming days, as well as sections of US 74 from Charlotte to Rockingham. There's probably 10 or 11 different creek crossings that, based on the flood conditions and projections, we anticipate those may flood as well, so we're working detours on those significant routes. That concludes my update. Thank you.
I will add, and I know the Secretary will agree, we do not want evacuees to go back.
Yes,
we
sir.
do not want that to happen right now. There's too much going on. Colonel Glenn McNeil.
Thank you, Governor. Glenn McNeil, Commander of the North Carolina State Highway Patrol. The State Highway Patrol continues to activate and deploy members into the affected areas to assist with the local response efforts. As stated, roadways are not getting better, and in some cases are worsening as the rain bands that occurred overnight are raising water levels in already flooded areas. As Governor Cooper stated previously and gave a long list of safety precautions, please, under no circumstances, should you drive around closed and barricaded roadways. The loss of life is unnecessary and preventable. So please, do not cross running water, standing water, or barricade closures. You're putting yourselves in harm's way and also the first responders who are coming to attempt the rescues. The media, thank you for helping us get that strong public safety message out. Just because the storm is moving out in your area, hazardous conditions still will continue for days to come. We continue to work with our excellent DOT partners, monitoring I-95, I-40, and also our U.S. routes that serve as primary thoroughfares to bring help and supplies into the affected areas. Overnight, our troopers responded to 99 collisions and 207 calls for service, which primarily involve road closures due to downed trees and flooded roadways. We'll ask if you have to travel, before doing so, visit your local media and also visit drivenc.gov before you travel so that you have the most up-to-date travel information. This concludes my brief. Thank you.
Dr. Mandy Cohen.
Thank you, Governor. Mandy Cohen, Secretary of the Department of Health and Human Services. And as you know, we're doing everything we can to help the people impacted by Hurricane Florence. And we know that folks are feeling effects right now and will for many weeks and months ahead. So one of the things we are working on at the department is providing as much flexibility in our programs that help our citizens here in North Carolina as much as we can. So the first we're announcing today, some flexibility that our department is implementing in coordination with the U.S. Department of Agriculture. These flexibilities are around the programs for food and nutrition services. These are going to help everyone in the state. They're statewide temporary flexibilities that apply to all 100 counties and the more than 600,000 households who are enrolled in the food and nutrition support programs. So beginning today, North Carolinians will be able to purchase hot food, including food prepared for immediate consumption from authorized electronic benefit transfer realtors using their EBT cards. All authorized EBT vendors in the state have been notified of this change, and this change is effective until the end of October. This is going to help families who are not able to prepare food at home due to displacement or to power outages, but we want them to still have access to warm meals. Customers should inquire first with the store to make sure that they can process hot food purchases, but this is a good step forward that folks can right now go to those vendors and get hot food. Second, we continue to work on making sure our medical shelters across the state are set up and supported. We had a fourth medical shelter set up and opened in Charlotte yesterday. All 4 of those shelters across the state have bed availability. The other 3 are in Goldsboro, Clayton, and High Point. If someone needs to go to a medical shelter, continue to work with local emergency management for those referrals. We also continue to stay in close contact with hospitals and other healthcare facilities throughout the state regarding their capabilities and their needs related to staffing or power, food, water, and supplies. We know folks are stretched. They're doing everything they can to meet the needs of their community. And they've been staying in good contact with local emergency management officials when they have issues, and we continue to gather that information and respond to those needs. Next, we're also established a disaster distress hotline for anyone needing crisis counseling or experiencing emotional distress related to the hurricane. The distress helpline is 1-800-985-5990. It is a 24/7 hotline dedicated for crisis counseling for people experiencing emotional distress. Again, that's 1-800-985-5990. There's additional information on the Department of Health and Human Services website or the Hurricane Florence webpage. And then lastly, I have to reiterate the message you continue to hear from the governor and the other colleagues standing with me. Please do not drive through standing water or moving water. Your life is at risk. Please turn around, don't drown. In addition, make sure that if there's flooding near your home, make sure you're not plugging in electrical devices. We don't want to see anyone electrocuted. We also make sure not to be using your gas-powered generators or outdoor grills inside your home due to carbon monoxide poisoning. And again, those foods that may have come into contact with flood or storm water, or if you've been without power and now those foods have not been refrigerated properly, please dispose of them. When in doubt, throw it out. We don't want to see any more people be impacted by the storm than absolutely necessary. Please be safe. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Cohen. Mr. Albie Lewis.
Thank you, Governor. I'm Albie Lewis, Federal Coordinating Officer with FEMA. From the start, we have had 2 incident management assistance teams working directly with the North Carolina Emergency Operations Center, conducting logistics, operations, and planning. Currently, we have well over 350 folks right in the Raleigh-Durham area working in support of the state. And we have approximately 2,000, not only in the state, but spread back to Atlanta and up to Washington, D.C. in support of operations. Last night, we assisted and pushed forward an additional 85 ambulances for patient evacuation and movement from facilities. We are also supporting pharmacy support for the ambulance fleet. We are coordinating medical providers for those shelter operations in Charlotte. Currently, we have 5 health and medical task forces, 2 rapid deployment forces who are providing support to all the medical needs in central and eastern branches. Mr. Sprayberry talked about the urban search and rescue teams. Many of those came through the EMAC. We are also providing an additional 800 federal urban search and rescue personnel who are deployed here in North Carolina with swift water rescue capabilities to augment those local fire support facilities and teams, and they've supported over 700 rescues. We have 4 disaster medical assistance teams and 3 national veterinary response teams, and they're staged in the Western and Central Branch to prepare for those additional impacts. We have 5 pharmacists supporting the pharmacy cache and staging in preparation for post-storm public health requirements. And then finally, our United States Army Corps of Engineers is supporting power restoration and conducting assessments on critical infrastructure to provide generator support where needed. Thank you.
Thank you, Albie. We're getting a lot of calls that people want to help. There are a lot of wonderful charities that are helping. You can also contribute to the North Carolina Disaster Relief Fund at governor.nc.gov. We have a number of experts here who are working as part of this team in the disaster response, and we will be glad to answer your questions.
Governor Gary Robertson with AP, and we talked a couple of days ago about how you would sum this up and compared to other North Carolina storms, but now as we're, seemingly on day 5 or 6 of the storms, start thinking about, are these storms like the monumental storms we hear in other parts of the country? We've heard about, we remember Andrew, we remember Katrina, we remember here in North Carolina Hazel. I mean, based on what you've seen and the life loss and the damage, how would you square those up with these other monumental storms?
This is an epic storm that is still continuing because the rivers are rising in certain parts of our state. Some areas have not seen the worst flooding yet. So this is a monumental disaster for our state that affects many of our counties, many of our people. We're going to be going through an assessment here over the weeks and months to be able to quantify the magnitude. But already we have 17 people who have died. We hope there are not more. We hope there's not another life lost. But we know that raging rivers are still out there and more lives can be claimed. We're all going to work hard.
Governor Cooper, Dewan Hobart with WTVD. Of those 17 that have died, does that include the one from Union County regarding the toddler? And then also President Trump coming to the state. Have you all connected yet? And do you plan to accompany him on his trip?
First, I think, number one, the answer is yes, that it does include the toddler tragically died in Union County. I know our office has been in touch with the President's office, and they are working on some arrangements for that. We're going to have a number of federal officials visiting us, including FEMA Administrator Brock Long and Homeland Security Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen, and I'm sure there will likely be others as well.
Hi, Governor. Debbie Elliott with NPR. As you've been coping with this crisis, are you gaining any insight into, how you live with water in this state, and are you thinking about planning for that, and also just the public resources needed to cope with something like this?
We are going to have to be smart about our recovery and about our long-range planning. When you have 2 500-year floods within 2 years of each other, it's pretty clear it's not a 500-year flood. So as we approach recovery, both short-term and long-term, we will have to look at flooded property, work on mitigation and buyouts, and being smart about how we recover, and make sure that we're involving local, state, and federal officials. We're going to need significant resources to recover. There's no question about that. People need help immediately. So I will just tell you this, that is certainly kept in my mind, but our immediate concern is pulling people out of the water, keeping them safe, and dealing with the short-term emergency needs that people have.
Travis Van with WRL, can you give us some details about how you're able to get in and out of Wilmington? What went into that? Is it just high axle trucks that get in and out right now?
So either Mike or Jim, which you guys?
Yes, sir. We have one limited route into Wilmington, and it is clear. So our DOT crews, supporting elements are all using that route. But it is one route that, based on what's going to happen over the next few days, we don't have a 100% degree of confidence that we can sustain it. So it is open today, and we're pushing supplies as hard as we possibly can with the plan that it may not sustain us over the next week.
Can you tell us, though, how you opened it? If you had to, did you have to do some construction, or?
No, it was all high water going down and debris getting out of that road. So a combination of getting the trees cut, utility crews helping us get the power lines out, and then getting letting the water get down below the pavement level.
And you're able to get normal vehicles through there, or just?
All of our vehicles can go.
I'll emphasize again, this is another point why we don't need evacuees going back. We've got one limited route into Wilmington, and it's being used for supplies and necessary emergency material and utility workers and law enforcement, and we don't need people going back right now, particularly when this route may disappear tonight. Yes,
I'm sorry, this isn't my question, but just to follow up, are you telling us that that limits around if a regular driver came up there, that they would be turned away? I just want to understand how limited access.
Yes, so we're pushing hundreds, if not thousands, of vehicles, so those have priority. However, the route is not closed, but we're just discouraging, unless you're a first responder or you have dire reason to get to Wilmington, please wait.
I wonder if I could ask Mike something regarding transitional housing. We know that there are, hotels. There's a lot of rural areas that don't have hotels, and those where a lot of people are going to be struggling. What are you going to? Have you thought about and provide any details about what you're going to do with people who are in rural areas, but there really isn't enough hotel space to set them up for weeks?
Right, so there's also other programs where the disaster survivor can actually move back into their house and begin to do some minor repairs that will be covered, and we're looking into the possibility of maybe getting some travel trailers too.
Travis with WRL, can you speak to dam breaches that we've seen and others that we're monitoring, particularly if there's some sort of imminent danger to people who have not evacuated yet? You got two, Michael.
So we're working very closely with the Department of Environmental Quality to monitor all of the high hazard dams. We had one small dam breach, I believe, in Brunswick County called Sanford Dam. There were no households, in the inundation flood map. So we are watching those very carefully to make sure that they're not, providing any issues to us. So still early, still much flooding and river cresting to go. So I know Secretary Regan and his team they actually are sitting right over there in the side of the state EOC, and we're linked up closely.
other questions?
Again, Juan Hobart with WTVD. Can you speak to the situation right now in Durham County where here in the Eno River has overflowed its banks? Anything you can say to those residents out there?
Anyone address that? We'll get some information for you on that. One thing we do know river flooding is dynamic, and it's happening all over the state as we speak. So we can get some information on that. Yes.
Lauren Horsch with the News and Observer. I know Homeland Security Secretary Nielsen is scheduled to be in North Carolina today. Have you already met with her? And if you haven't, what are you planning to discuss, or what have you discussed with her so far?
I will be meeting with her a little later in the day, and we will be discussing FEMA and immediate, and also the setup for long-term needs. I have had an earlier telephone discussion with her. We know that we're going to need significant federal resources. They have promised them across the board, and we're going to continue our contact with them. And I think she's going to come and look at some of the storm damage, as well as to meet with me today. And Albie Lewis and I will be going over and meeting with her.
Thank you again, appreciate it. Can you give us any updates on coal ash ponds and/or hog lagoons, whether there's been any news about that?
I'll call on our Secretary of Environmental Quality.
Thank you, Governor. As it pertains to coal ash, I think you're aware that we had failure at one of our landfills at Sutton Plant. Duke Energy is on site doing an analysis. Within the next hour, we will have the Department of Environmental Quality solid waste experts on site as well to assess the damage to that landfill. We are monitoring coal ash, or actually coolant ponds at Weatherspoon, and do not have any action there as well. In terms of hog lagoons, we've got one hog lagoon breach reported in Duplin County. We've got 5 reports of hog lagoon overtops in both Jones and Pender County. And we've got 2 reports of hog lagoons being inundated by nearby bodies of water in Jones County. Those are what we've had reported thus far. Reports are continuing to come in, and as soon as the environment is safe, we will send staff out to evaluate those reports and look for any addition.
That was Michael Regan, our Secretary of Environmental Quality. Any other questions? Okay, we'll let you know when the next briefing is. Thank you.